Some betrayals hit you like a slap. Others creep in quietly, wearing a smile. When my wife came to me in tears, accusing me of something I hadn't done, I didn't shout. I didn't argue. I started planning. What she didn't know was that I wouldn't just prove her wrong. I'd make sure she'd regret ever trying to play me. I've always thought betrayal had a smell. Not the sharp stink of sweat or perfume. Something quieter, like the faint trace of smoke after a candle has been blown out. A smell you don't notice at first, but once you catch it, you can't unsmell it. She was standing in the kitchen when I walked in, clutching her phone like it was a lifeline. Eyes red, chest rising and falling too fast. I didn't get a hello, didn't even get the usual lazy smile. Instead, she said in a rush, almost tripping over the words. "He saw you," she blurted. With her. For a moment I thought she was joking, playing one of her strange guessing games. Then I saw the way her lips trembled. "Who saw me?" I asked. Her voice cracked. "Evan. He saw you in town with some girl. Said you two look close." I leaned on the counter, keeping my tone casual. "Close, huh?" She took a shaky breath, her hand tightening around the edge of the counter like she needed to keep herself from falling. "I need to know, were you seeing her?" The way she said it told me everything. Evan wasn't just some guy. Evan was her guy, the one she'd been sneaking around with. And here she was, trembling in front of me, desperate for me to deny what she thought she knew, because deep down she needed her affair to stay intact. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I let the silence stretch. It was fascinating, in a twisted way, to watch her squirm. Her hair fell forward as she shook her head, like she couldn't quite believe she'd been pushed into making this accusation. Finally, I smiled, slow and controlled. "You mean the woman I was with yesterday afternoon?" Her eyes flashed, half fear, half anger. "So you admit it?" I almost laughed. That was my sister, Claire. Her jaw slackened. She blinked at me, and for a split second I saw the exact moment guilt flooded her bloodstream. She was helping me. I said evenly, "I've been planning something for you. A surprise." I let my gaze linger on her, let the weight of my words sink in. We were talking about how to make it special. She swallowed hard. "Oh my God, I didn't know." "You didn't ask," I said, cutting her off. Her voice went small. "I'm sorry. Sorry." That was the word she reached for, but the look in her eyes wasn't pure apology. It was panic. And I knew why. Because now, the spotlight had swung back on her. She'd just admitted to having conversations with Evan about me. She'd let me see that she trusted him more than me. I stepped closer, close enough to smell the faint trace of her perfume, the one she used to wear only for me. Now it just made me think of other hands on her skin. "It's okay," I said softly. "I get it. You misunderstood." Her shoulders slumped in relief. She thought she'd been forgiven. She even reached for me, sliding her hands around my waist like she used to after a fight. And for a moment, my body remembered why I'd fallen for her. The warmth of her curves pressing into me, the ghost of her breath on my neck. But I didn't hold her back. I didn't kiss her, because I already knew what I was going to do. I played a part of the hurt, but understanding husband. I'd let her think she was safe. And then I'd take that safety away. She didn't need to know that yet. The next day, I found myself walking down the street with no real destination. Or at least, that's what I told myself. Truth was, I had a destination. I'd replayed her trembling voice in my head all night. Evan said he saw you, and now I wanted to see Evan for myself. I knew where to find him. She'd mentioned his gym once, in that careless way people do when they forget they're talking to someone who actually listens. So I went there, not to confront him. Not yet. I caught him outside, leaning against a railing, a water bottle in his hand. The kind of guy who makes sure his sleeves are tight enough to show the curve of his biceps. He spotted me, and I saw the brief flicker of recognition, followed by uncertainty. He knew who I was. I smiled like we were old friends. "Evan, right?" He straightened, cautious. "Yeah, and you're—" "Her husband." I finished for him. I offered my hand. "Good to finally meet you." He took it, his grip firm but just shy of aggressive. Yeah, same here." I leaned casually on the railing. "Listen, I know this might be awkward. I heard you saw me with someone the other day." He froze, clearly unsure how much my wife had told me. "I might have." I chuckled, shaking my head. "That was my sister, Claire. We were planning a surprise for my wife. Guess it didn't exactly look that way." His eyebrows went up. "Oh, damn. She didn't tell me that." "Yeah, she was upset. Thought the worst. Can't really blame her." I made sure to glance away, as if I was the one nursing wounded pride. Anyway, I just want to clear the air. No hard feelings. His shoulders relaxed a little. The shift was subtle, but I saw it, me moving from potential threat to harmless idiot. Exactly where I wanted to be. We talked a bit more about nothing, mostly. Sports, the gym, a new bar downtown. I laughed at his jokes, nodded like I respected him. Inside, my mind was cataloging every detail. The brand of his watch, the cologne he wore, the way he checked his reflection in a shop window. Without realizing I'd noticed, by the time we parted, he'd agreed to grab a drink sometime. He thought he'd just disarm me. In reality, he'd walked straight into my reach. That night, my wife was unusually sweet. She curled up against me on the couch, resting her head on my shoulder, while we watched a movie neither of us was really paying attention to. Her hand slid absently along my thigh, and for a moment I felt the old pull between us. It would have been easy to give in, to pretend none of this was happening, but I didn't. Instead, I let her touch me without responding, like I was distracted, like I was still just a little hurt. That's how you make someone lean in closer. You take a step back. Later in bed, I thought about Evan again, about the look in his eyes when I told him there were no hard feelings. He believed it, and soon I'd have him believing other things too. This wasn't about catching them in the act. I already knew what they were. This was about control, about showing her and him that I could pull the strings without either of them realizing until it was too late. I turned on my side, watching her sleep. She looked peaceful, lips slightly parted, one arm curled under her pillow. Beautiful, still, and I hated that I noticed, because beauty, I'd learned, is just another kind of weapon, and I was about to use it against her. The first drink with Evan was at a crowded sports bar on a Thursday night. The kind of place where the music is just loud enough to make you lean closer, but not so loud you can't talk. I arrived a little late on purpose. Let him see me walking in like I had somewhere better to be. He grinned, waved me over, and slid a cold beer across the table. "Man, thanks for coming," he said. "Wasn't sure if you'd actually show." "Why wouldn't I?" I asked, taking a seat. He shrugged. "You know, the whole thing." I gave him a dismissive wave, the kind that says water under the bridge. "Told you, misunderstanding. Besides, I could use a new friend." We talked about sports again, then cars, then a bit about work. I made sure to keep the conversation light, until the second round of drinks. That's when I leaned back in my chair and said, almost casually, "So, you and my wife talk a lot, huh?" His eyes flickered, just for a second. Yeah, she's easy to talk to." I smirked. She always has been. Sometimes a little too easy, if you know what I mean. He froze halfway through taking a sip. "What's that supposed to mean?" I laughed and shook my head. "Nothing bad. She's one of those people who gets attention without trying. Guys look at her. Sometimes she looks back. I've gotten used to it." Evan frowned, like he wasn't sure whether to agree or defend her. I didn't give him the chance. "Don't get me wrong," I said, leaning forward. "I trust her. I mean, hell, I married her. But she's playful, flirty, even when she doesn't mean to be. You've probably seen it." He hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Maybe." I smiled like we were sharing a harmless secret, then changed the subject to a football game on the TV. I let the thought hang there, not pushing it too hard. Seeds don't grow if you stomp on them right after planting. Over the next week, I made a point of keeping in touch with him. A text here, a quick call there. I dropped little remarks in passing. Never accusations, just observations. "Hey, saw her talking to some guy at the coffee shop this morning. Probably nothing, but she seemed animated." Or, "She mentioned going out with a friend Friday night. Didn't say who. Guess I'll find out." Every time, I acted like it didn't bother me, like I was the world's most secure husband. And every time, I could feel the small shifts in his responses, slower replies, a hint of hesitation in his voice. Meanwhile, at home, she had no idea. She thought I'd forgiven her for everything. She laughed more, touched me more, even cooked dinner a few times like she used to when we first got married. And I let her think we were fine. But sometimes, when she was talking, I'd catch myself staring at her mouth and remembering that it had been on him, that somewhere in her mind, she probably still replayed whatever they'd done together. It made my skin crawl, and perversely made the plan feel even better. One Friday evening, I bumped into Evan near the park. He looked distracted, didn't have the same easy grin as before. We talked for a bit. And just as I was about to leave, I said, "You ever get the feeling you're not the only one in someone's life?" He looked at me sharply. "Why would you say that?" I shrugged. "No reason. Just people surprise you, man. Even the ones you think you know." Then I walked away before he could ask anything else. The first real sign that Evan was starting to doubt her came on a Tuesday night. I was in the kitchen rinsing dishes when my phone buzzed. His name lit up the screen. "You busy?" I dried my hands and typed back, "Not really. What's up?" He called instead of replying. "Hey," he said, his voice lower than usual. "You ever notice she takes a while to text back sometimes?" I bit back a smile. "Yeah, always been that way. She gets caught up in things." "Yeah, but, she was shopping yesterday, right?" I ran into her downtown. She wasn't shopping. She was at that wine bar on 6th. I made a pause just long enough to make him wonder what I was thinking. "Huh, didn't mention that to me." He was quiet for a beat. "Look, maybe it's nothing. Just weird." I let out a sigh that sounded tired, not angry. "Evan, here's the thing. People don't always tell their partners every little detail. But yeah, sometimes the stuff they don't mention ends up saying more than the stuff they do." He didn't answer right away. I could almost hear him filing the thought away. We hung up, and I went back to the sink, the warm water and the scent of dish soap oddly soothing. Every step in this plan had to be measured, subtle, push too hard, and it would snap back on me. Go too soft, and he'd never believe it. That Thursday, I suggested we meet for lunch. He showed up looking tired, like he hadn't slept well. We sat in a booth at a small diner, and I kept the conversation light until halfway through the meal. Then I lowered my voice. "Hey, this might sound weird, but if you ever hear something about her from someone else, you tell me, right?" He set down his coffee cup. "Of course. Why?" I shrugged. "No reason. Just she's got a way of keeping people guessing. Makes you wonder sometimes." Evan studied me like he was trying to decide whether I was confiding in him or warning him. That's exactly the balance I wanted. Over the next week, I let the little moments build. She'd say she was meeting a friend, female friend, and I'd mentioned Evan in passing, adding just enough vagueness to keep him curious. One night, after she'd gone to bed, I sent him a quick text. "You ever feel like people hide in plain sight?" It was a strange message, and I knew it. But it was the kind of thing that sticks, that makes a person start connecting dots that were never there. The next time we all crossed paths, pure coincidence, of course, he was different, watching her more closely, like he was looking for something in her expression. She didn't notice. She was too busy laughing at something I'd said. And in that moment, I realized something important. I didn't even have to prove anything to him. All I had to do was let him prove it to himself. Later that night, lying in bed next to her, she reached for me in that slow, lazy way she used to when we were first married. My body responded out of habit, but my mind was somewhere else, picturing Evan's face when the final piece of my plan fell into place. Her skin was warm against mine, her breath soft at my ear, but all I could think about was how sweet it would be to watch her world collapse in silence, without a single shout or fight. Because real revenge isn't loud. It's quiet, surgical, and when it's done right, it leaves the other person wondering if they destroyed themselves all on their own. It started with a text to Marcus. We'd been friends for years, the kind of friend my wife barely paid attention to because he wasn't flashy or loud. Average guy. Safe. "Hey, I need a favor. Dinner sometime next week. Just you, me, and her." He replied a few minutes later. "What's going on?" I sent back, "Nothing shady. Just need you to help me with something. I'll explain over drinks." I knew Marcus would show. He owed me a few favors, and more importantly, he was trustworthy. Not the type to ask too many questions when you told him the truth. At least, the version of it you wanted him to hear. That weekend, over a couple beers at my place, I laid it out. I wanted to surprise her with something. But I needed to look like you and I are meeting for business. Then she happens to join us. Totally innocent. But I wanted to seem casual. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You're being vague as hell." "I'll owe you." "Big." He shrugged. "All right. But if this blows up in my face, I'm blaming you." We agreed on a night, Thursday, a quiet Italian restaurant with a corner booth. I picked it specifically because I knew Evan liked to hang out at the bar across the street. All I had to do was make sure the timing was perfect. On Monday, I casually told my wife, "Marcus wants to grab dinner later this week. You should come along. He hasn't seen you in ages." She smiled. "Sure. What's the occasion?" just catching up. She didn't think twice about it, and that was the beauty of it. No suspicion, no drama. She had no idea she was walking into the last act. Over the next few days, I kept feeding Evan just enough to keep his mind spinning. A quick comment here, a strange pause there. Wednesday night. I texted him, "You around tomorrow? Might grab a drink after work." He said he'd be at his usual spot, the one across from the restaurant. Perfect. Thursday came, and I could feel the electricity under my skin. All day at work, I kept picturing the way this was going to unfold. Marcus and I sitting in the booth, my wife walking in, maybe touching my shoulder or leaning close to Marcus to say hello. Completely harmless gestures, until you put them in the wrong frame. And Evan? He'd be sitting across the street, seeing only the angles I wanted him to see. We arrived at the restaurant right on time. Marcus was already there, sipping a glass of red wine. My wife slid into the seat next to me, smiling at him. "It's been forever," she said warmly. We ordered food, made small talk. I made sure to lean back now and then, letting her and Marcus talk across me. At one point, she laughed at something he said and touched his arm lightly. My pulse quickened, not from jealousy, but from how perfect it was going to look. Halfway through the meal, I excused myself to the bathroom, but I didn't go. I stepped outside instead, pretending to check my phone, scanning the street. And there he was, Evan, leaning against the doorway of the bar, a drink in his hand, staring right at them through the restaurant window. Bait taken. I went back inside, pretending not to notice anything, and sat down. My wife was in mid-story, her eyes bright, her hands moving animatedly as she spoke to Marcus. And outside, I knew Evan was swallowing every second of it. I didn't have to wait long for the fuse to catch fire. By the time the entrees hit the table, I could feel it. Evan's gaze drilling to the glass from across the street. He wasn't drinking anymore. He was watching. Marcus was telling a story about a disastrous road trip, and my wife was eating it up, her laugh spilling over the table. She leaned forward, her fingers brushing his arm again. Innocent as hell if you asked her, damning if you asked him. I excused myself again, this time heading to the bar by the entrance. From there, I could see Evan crossing the street. He looked calm, but his eyes had that flat, dangerous kind of calm, like a man holding in too much heat. He stepped inside the restaurant, scanning for her. I slipped past him on my way back to the table, our shoulders brushing. "Evening," I said casually, as if bumping into him here was the most normal thing in the world. His eyes flicked to me, then to her, then to Marcus. "What's going on?" My wife blinked at him in surprise. "Evan, what are you?" He didn't answer. He just stared at her, his jaw tight. "You didn't mention you were having dinner with him." He nodded toward Marcus. Marcus held up his hands. "Hey, man, it's just dinner. We were catching up." Evan's mouth twitched like he was holding back 100 different things he wanted to say. He turned to her. "You told me you were busy tonight." "I was," she said, confused. "I am. This is just dinner with my husband and his friend." "Friend." Evan cut in, the word dripping with disbelief. "Right." I stepped in, voice calm but low. "Evan, this isn't the place. Let's step outside." He didn't move. For a moment, I thought he might blow right there. But then he turned and stalked toward the door. I followed him out. On the sidewalk, the air was cool, damp with the threat of rain. Evan spun on me. "What the hell is going on?" I see her laughing, touching his arm. I lifted a hand. "Evan, listen. You're reading into things." "Am I?" He shot back. "Or are you covering for her?" I let the silence stretch just enough before sighing. "Look, you've been with her long enough to know she's complicated." His eyes narrowed. "What does that mean?" "It means," I said carefully, she likes attention, "and maybe she doesn't always think about how it looks. But you're smart enough to draw your own conclusions." He stared at me, searching for any hint of a lie. I gave him none. Just quiet, measured calm. Finally, he muttered, "I need to think." Then he turned and walked off into the night, shoulders hunched like a man carrying too much. When I went back inside, she was still talking to Marcus, but the light in her eyes had dimmed. She glanced at me. What was that about? I kissed her temple. Nothing important. But inside, I knew the spark had caught. And once a man like Evan starts imagining things, I didn't text Evan for 3 days. That's all it took for the tension to start simmering. Men like him can't stand silence. It lets their imagination run wild. And I wanted his imagination to do the heavy lifting for me. When I finally reached out, it was a simple, "You good?" He replied within a minute. "We need to talk." We met at a small pub halfway between his place and mine. I ordered a beer. He didn't even touch his. He just sat there, jaw tight, eyes dark. "She's hiding something," he said without preamble. I tilted my head, pretending to think. "You're sure?" He leaned forward. "I know her tells. The way she looks away when she lies. She's been doing it since that night. And she's been on her phone more." I took a slow sip of beer. "Maybe she's just distracted. Work? Friends? Or another man?" he muttered. I didn't answer right away. I just let that thought hang in the air between us, heavy enough to sink into him. Then I shrugged. "If that's what you think, maybe you should ask her." He shook his head. "No. If she's hiding something, she'll just deny it. I need proof." That was my opening. I leaned in, lowering my voice. "Then watch her. See where she goes when she says she's somewhere else. And if you need a little help, I might be able to give you some." He gave me a long look. "Why would you help me?" I smiled faintly. "Because I don't like being lied to either." That night, I went home to her like nothing had happened. She was curled up on the couch, phone in hand. "Where were you?" she asked. "Just grabbed a beer with Evan," I said. Her brow creased for half a second before she smoothed it out. "Oh, how's he doing?" "Fine," I said, sitting beside her. "Why?" "No reason." I could almost hear the gears turning in her head. She was smart enough to wonder why I was still on good terms with her lover, but not smart enough to realize that this, staying friendly, was the rope I was letting her and Evan twist into a noose. Over the next week, I started planting smaller seeds. A casual mention of seeing her talking to a man outside a cafe. Never saying who, never saying when. A remark about how she seemed to smile more at certain texts. With every comment, I saw the flicker in Evan's eyes when we met up. Doubt is a slow poison, but once it's in the bloodstream, it spreads. The real beauty of it? She had no idea. She thought the storm was somewhere far away, a low rumble that would pass. She didn't realize the clouds were gathering right over her head, and when the rain came, it would pour. The idea came to me on a Wednesday morning, halfway through my coffee. A perfect trap needs two things: bait and a believable reason for the prey to walk into it. I already had the bait. I just had to make her think. She was the one pulling the strings. I brought it up casually over dinner. "You remember Marcus? From the restaurant?" She nodded, sipping her wine. "The one Evan freaked out about?" "That's the one. He's in town again next week. Asked if we could grab a drink. Catch up. I told him I'd check with you." Her eyebrows lifted just slightly, curiosity, maybe a spark of ego. "You want me to come?" I shrugged. "Up to you. But you two seemed to get along last time." She hesitated for only a second before smiling. "Sure. Why not?" That was all I needed. The next day, I texted Evan. "She's meeting Marcus again next Friday. Just you, me, and a front row seat." He called within minutes. "Where?" I told him the name of the lounge. Exactly the kind of dimly lit place where shadows make you wonder what's happening in them. I could hear the tightness in his voice when he repeated the name. "I'll be there." The rest of the week, I played the part of the oblivious husband. I teased her about what she'd wear, joked about Marcus's terrible jokes, pretended to forget the exact time we were supposed to meet. On Friday, I made a point of leaving her at the table with Marcus when I went to take a call. I slipped outside, crossing the street to where Evan stood, half hidden in a doorway. "She's already here," I said, "and she's laughing a lot." His jaw flexed. "Let's see." We moved to the window. Inside, she leaned forward, her hand grazing Marcus's arm as she laughed. It was nothing, absolutely nothing. But through Evan's eyes, it might as well have been foreplay. "You see," I murmured. His breathing got heavier. I knew it. I clapped a hand on his shoulder like I was consoling him. "Wait until she's more comfortable. Then walk in." He nodded slowly, never taking his eyes off her. I left him there, watching, simmering, ready to boil over. Back inside, Marcus was telling her some ridiculous story about misflight. She didn't notice me sit back down. Her eyes were locked on him, that easy smile on her lips, the exact moment I'd planned for Evan to see. When he finally walked in, the air in the room shifted. She froze. Marcus looked up, startled. And me? I just leaned back, letting the fire I'd built all week finally touch the fuse. The second Evan's eyes locked on hers, the whole table froze like a photograph mid-shatter. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Marcus looked from her to Evan, confusion dawning too slowly to matter. Evan stepped forward, voice tight and low. "Enjoying yourself?" Evan, she started, but he cut her off with a sharp gesture. I should have known. I fucking knew you couldn't help yourself. I sat back in my chair, calm as still water. Whoa, maybe we should. Stay out of it. Evan snapped at me without looking. Perfect. The anger had swallowed him whole. Now he wasn't thinking. He was reacting. Exactly what I counted on. Marcus put his hands up. Hey, man, nothing's going on here. We're just talking. Talking? Evan's voice cracked with a bitter laugh. Like you talk with him? He jerked his head toward me. You just can't stop, can you? Her cheeks flushed, but I could see the panic in her eyes. It's not like that. Marcus is just... I don't want to hear it. Evan spat. I reached for my drink, taking a slow sip like none of this was my problem. In a way, it wasn't anymore. The gears I'd set in motion were grinding toward their inevitable end. People at nearby tables were watching now, the kind of public humiliation that sticks in someone's memory for years. She glanced at me like I might step in, but I didn't move. Let her feel the cold. Evan leaned in over the table, his shadow swallowing her. You think I'm stupid? You think I didn't notice you pulling away? Checking your phone every 5 seconds? Smiling at messages you didn't want me to see. Her lips trembled. Save it. His voice dropped even lower. We're done. He turned on his heel and stormed out, shoving past the waiter without apology. The door swung shut behind him, the sound like a gavel hitting wood. For a moment, she just sat there, staring at the space he'd left. Then her eyes flicked to me. What the hell just happened? I shrugged. You tell me. She blinked. You set this up. Did I? I said, tilting my head. Or did you? Her face went pale. She stood so quickly her chair tipped over, but she didn't bother to fix it. She grabbed her bag and bolted, leaving Marcus and me alone at the table. Marcus exhaled slowly. Well, that was intense. I smiled faintly. You have no idea. The truth was, my work wasn't finished. The public scene was just the beginning. The real damage would come later, when a loneliness hit her in the quiet, when she realized she hadn't just lost her lover, she'd lost me too. And that, I thought as I drained my drink, was the point of all this. Not to yell, not to throw plates, not to beg for explanations. The point was to take everything she thought she controlled and show her she never had control at all. 2 days. That's how long she stayed gone. 2 days of blessed silence, no texts, no calls. I knew she'd be back eventually. Not because she loved me, but because people like her always circle back when their other options vanish. When she finally showed up, it was after dark. I heard the hesitant knock before I saw her shadow through the frosted glass. I didn't rush to the door. Let her wait. When I opened it, she looked smaller somehow. Hair messy. Makeup smudged from what I guessed had been a long day of trying to hold herself together. Can I come in? She asked. I stepped aside without a word. She slipped past me, scanning the living room like it might have changed in 48 hours. I don't know what to say. She began. That's new, I said, leaning against the doorframe. Her eyes flicked up to me, searching for something, anger, maybe, or hope. It wasn't what it looked like. Marcus is just... Don't. I cut in. Don't insult me with that line. She bit her lip, a nervous habit I'd once found sexy. Now it just looked like a tell in a poker game. Evan's not answering my calls, she said finally. I think he's done with you, I said, flat. She flinched. Did you? I didn't answer. I didn't have to. The silence between us was thick. She shifted her weight, tugging at the hem of her sweater, like a child being scolded. Why are you doing this? I pushed off the doorframe, walking toward her slowly. Because you didn't just cheat on me. You took me for a fool. And worse, you thought you could keep taking without consequences. Her throat worked, but no sound came out. I stopped just close enough for her to feel my presence. Her perfume was faint, familiar, and for a second I hated myself for noticing. You always think you're the one pulling the strings, I said quietly, but you've never been anything more than predictable. Her eyes glistened. I made a mistake. No, I interrupted. A mistake is spilling coffee on someone. What you did was a choice. Over and over. The tears came then, sudden and unpretty. She reached for my arm, but I stepped back. Watching her hand fall away was more satisfying than I'd admit. Where am I supposed to go? She asked, her voice breaking. That's not my problem anymore. I walked to the front door, holding it open. She stood there for a long moment, staring at me like she couldn't believe this was happening. Then, without another word, she walked out. When the door clicked shut behind her, I let out a slow breath. It wasn't over yet, not for her. The real punishment wasn't being thrown out. It was realizing no one was waiting to let her back in. And I intended to make sure that truth sank in, inch by inch. It was a week before I heard from her again. Not a text, not a call. Just a sudden knock one evening when I was halfway through a beer. I almost didn't answer. Almost. When I opened the door, she was standing there in the rain. No umbrella, no coat, just damp hair clinging to her cheeks and an expression that was equal parts desperation and exhaustion. "Please," she said, "I have nowhere else to go." I let the silence stretch until it was heavy enough to make her shift from foot to foot. Then I stepped aside. She came in, dripping on the floor, and I could smell the faint trace of alcohol on her breath. "I've been staying with a friend," she said, not meeting my eyes. "But it's not working out." "Friend?" I asked. "Or lover?" She winced. "He doesn't want me either. Not after—" She trailed off, swallowing hard. I leaned back against the counter, watching her squirm. She still had beauty, fading now at the edges, but enough to remind me of why I once wanted her, and enough for me to know exactly why she hated being unwanted. "I've been thinking," she said finally, "about us, about how stupid I was. I want to fix things." I almost laughed. Fix things. Like I was a loose cabinet hinge, and not the man she gutted in slow motion. "You want to fix things," I repeated. "And what exactly do I get out of that?" Her eyes filled again. "I love you." It was a wrong thing to say. Maybe once it would have worked. But now it just sounded like someone reading from a script they didn't believe in. I stepped closer, lowering my voice so she had to lean in to hear. "No, you love the idea of someone who still wants you. But that's gone. I'm gone." She blinked at me like I'd slapped her. "You remember the first time we kissed?" I asked. "That rush you felt? That was me choosing you. This," I gestured between us, "is me choosing to let you go." Her jaw trembled. "So that's it." "That's it." I walked to the door and held it open. For a moment, I thought she might try to push past me, make a scene. But she just stared, lips pressed tight, and stepped back out into the rain. This time, I locked the door the second it closed. No hesitation. When I sat back down with my beer, I felt it. The weight I'd been carrying finally gone. Not because she was gone, but because I'd made sure she left knowing exactly why. I hadn't just taken away her comfort. I'd taken away her control. And in the end, that was the sweetest revenge of all.